Hey guys, I wanted to share something with you super important about dog health and well-being. And surprisingly enough, you see this little seed right here? This little guy, when it breaks apart, let's see if I can break it apart for you. This is a foxtail, and I'll get the scientific name for you here pretty soon. But these little guys get under the skin, like right there, often in between the toes, and then they can travel up through the body and this little pointy part at the end. Let's see if you can, oh, it's not going to focus well for me. Let's put it right there and see if I can. It's really, really pointy, and it's got some hygroscopic properties, which means that when it gets wet, it tends to get bigger and smaller, so that that pushes it along the trajectory of that pointy piece. And this can get into the meniscus and under the skin in the dog. I think in between the dermis and the subdermis, but not sure. And then it can travel up into the spine and cause what was that? Spondyliosis, I believe, discospondyliosis, which is a very, very dangerous and scary infectious bacterial infection in the spinal column and in the intervertebral discs there, and it's a bone infection in the spine. So really nasty there. It can also get into the digestive system and into the heart and lungs and cause serious problems. I found the first one of these on my property about 3 years ago. And the first ones I found late into the seeding season and was not able to do any real control on them. Didn't know how and didn't have time. The second year I was able to start working on it pretty seriously, and I did break out the spray. I don't generally spray for weeds, but this one is just so hard on the health of my animals that I'm willing to take a little risk there in order to make them happier right now. So it's very susceptible to Roundup right now, but and I'll talk more about this later, it continues to emerge throughout the year. It's a warm season grass, so it comes on fairly late. I think this year, this is the third year that I've had it. First year control was remarkably successful. But I still have it. There's still a seed bank in the ground. The reason I know it was successful is because this area here, in which I did a lot of hand weeding and a little bit of spraying, last year I have almost no plants this year. That almost is critical because, as you know from biology, we've got geometric reproduction. And so one plant leads to two plants, leads to 4, 8, 16, except it's even a higher magnitude than that. One plant can produce 100 seeds, and then those 100 seeds can produce, 50 plants, which would produce 500 seeds, yada, yada. So it spreads really, really rapidly. And you can see here that I've pulled them from the roots, and that just helps keep them coming back this year. It is an annual, so if I spray it early enough before it has gone to flower. So this seed head is just about to go to flower. Let's find one that's really early in the boot stage. This one, as you can see, it's just emerging from the boot, which is the stem here. That's a great stage to spray them because they can't go to seed there, and they will die and lay down on the top of the ground, and you can come back and you can pull them up by the roots or look for other plants which might be right around in that area, which will emerge after you've sprayed. So at this point, I've sprayed about 4 times this year in places where I thought they might be, and I've done a pretty good job of control. But as you can see, they're still coming back up in places, and in some places I missed. So once they get to this stage, it's really easy to see them. But when they're this small, or you can see how tiny this little guy is. He's about 3 to 4 centimeters tall, and I have ones that are actually coming up at 1 centimeter tall. Unfortunately, those seem to be in the really, really short grass and in the gravel, so they're relatively easy to see, but it can be challenging to see them when they're a little bit purplish or a little bit brown, like this one over here. So I walk the whole property at least once a week, but what I do is I do it every 3 days. I walk in the areas where I know these guys have been, and then they can go from looking just like this, where it's very hard for me to recognize them, to looking like this, where it's before flower, and I can still pull them by the roots, put them in a bucket, tie them up in a plastic bag with a knot on it, and throw them in the garbage can so that they die and the seeds don't spread. Because if I just pull this up and throw it on the ground, at this stage, once they've already gone to flower, they will just form seeds, and those seeds will then spread from right there. So this little plant cost me $10,000 in vet bills last year, between all of the different problems that I've had from it. So obviously it's worth a lot to me in terms of money and happiness, my dog's health and well-being, to get rid of this little guy. And I would say between last year and this year on control so far, I've managed to get rid of 90%. And what I'm aiming for, I'll talk a little bit more in my next video about how I'm doing this, but I'm aiming for is 100% eradication each and every year, so that those few seeds that remain in the soil, when they pop up, I can pull those out and I get fewer and fewer every year. I'm expecting to have to do about 5 years of this kind of control. And of course, it's not going to get easier next year, because next year there's only going to be a couple of plants and it's going to be so much harder to see them. So I have to keep up my vigilance this year and next year. And I have to really watch out for those little tiny suckers. And of course, when I see those seeds on the ground, I pick them up. And that can be challenging, but I want 100% control. So what I'm going to do with these guys now is I'm just going to put them in my buckets here, which I take with me around the property. So I can throw these plants in the bucket and make sure that I don't leave any seeds on the ground. And then I'm going to put these in a plastic bag, like I said, wrap them up tighter than tight, and throw them in the garbage. All right, there you have it. Foxtails are evil. Let's get rid of them. They're a non-native species here in the U.S., and so I don't have any guilt getting rid of these things. These things are just nasty. All right, guys. We'll talk to you soon. Signing off.